Hey guys, and welcome back to another Conan Exiles video. Today we are going over 5 more building tips that can help you improve your buildings. The reception on my first building tips video was great. A lot of people seem to enjoy it and find it helpful. And as I said in that video, I do have some more tips, 5 more of which we'll be looking at in this video. These tips are very much based on structural elements and aesthetics that you can introduce or improve in your builds that will help to make whatever you're building look more appealing. As with the previous video, these tips are more aimed at roleplay and PvE building, focusing more on aesthetic elements and making your builds look better, as opposed to making them harder to raid through fortifications, better security, etc. These tips won't necessarily translate great to PvP, but you may find some of them at least somewhat helpful, once your base is fully secure. So without further ado, let's get started. The first thing we're going to look at is depth and verticality. This is a concept that can vastly change the interior of your build with just the removal or addition of a few different tiles. Rather than having a house with each floor enclosed, you can change the entire atmosphere of a build by allowing for more open space within said build. Let's go ahead and take a look around this example house. As you can see, this build is boring. There's no doubt about it, and there's nothing interesting about this house. It feels pretty average and stale. Now let's try removing some of the ceilings and converting them into catwalks above the ground floor, and adjusting the stair structure to allow for multiple entrances to the first floor. Just by removing some of these pieces and adding some fences around the catwalks, the build now looks a lot more open and spacious from inside, which adds greatly to the depth and verticality of this build. There are many other ways to add these sorts of elements, such as support structures on the ceiling, which you may have seen in many of my larger builds, such as the Terranium Mansion or the Bard's Academy. These elements can help to flesh out a build and make it feel a little bit more realistic, along with giving us the impression that it is supported from within, which again adds a lot of depth and verticality. Next, pillars and supports. This is a fairly simple tip, but pillars can absolutely make the difference in a build, and can elevate an average build to something that seems far more structured and purposeful. By adding pillars to certain crucial points of the build, you can make the build seem much more realistic. Of course, you can't just throw pillars around willy-nilly, but purposeful and considered placement can improve any build. You can also use pillars to make a home that looks very unique, creating distinct space and making homes that look and feel very different from many other builds. This example shows one of the ways you can do that. I'm not a massive fan of this structure myself, but I could see something like this working for overwater homes, or elevated huts within the swamps or the jungle rivers to the east. Pillars are also great for structuring individual rooms. Simply adding a pillar in the centre of a 3x3 room or something of the similar dimensions can create distinct structure where there previously was none. Pillars are very simple items that are criminally underutilised in most builds, and can completely change the look and feel of your structures. Next, awnings and overhangs. Awnings are cool little items that can completely change the look of a build. Of course, we're all familiar with the Yamatai style, that utilises awnings to emulate the iconic Japanese Matsumoto style. However, you can use awnings outside of these sorts of builds to create interesting shapes and designs. Let's take a look at this house we're building right now, and how placing awnings around the home can completely change the aesthetics of the build. You can also raise and lower the roof to different levels to again change the aesthetic, each of which change can be utilised in different ways to improve the look and feel of the structure. As for awnings themselves, they can be a little bit of a pain to work with at times. Inside corners are a pain with awnings, as you used to be able to clip 2 awnings inside each other to create an interior corner. However, as of a recent patch addressing illegal collision, this is no longer possible, even with mods that can disable some clipping elements. Therefore, the current best way to approach inside corners are regular corner awnings, so if you'd like to sit everything flush, try to avoid inside corners, though this isn't always possible, and having the corner awnings on the inside corners works well enough to not be too much of a problem if you're not really bothered by that sort of thing. Next, let's take a look at the concept of making an entrance. This is more of a cumulative concept, as opposed to a strict practice that can be easily copied for every build. Let's take a trip back in time and look at my Terranium Mansion build from a while ago. The build is currently unfurnished, but take a look at the first thing you see when you enter. There is a sense of grandiose scale to the build, with access to the first floor being immediately in front of you and the massively high roof sitting above. Even without decoration, you can see how this build would feel impressive to walk into. The only thing I personally would improve now if I had to build this again would be a bit of a longer entrance hall to give you a better view of the overall build. Now let's swing over to my Bard's Academy build from a while ago. Whilst the outside of this build is admittedly unimpressive, entering the build is a completely different experience. There is a very clear sense of scale and luxury within this build as soon as the doors swing open to reveal the vast academy, and this sense of grand entrance is the same when you come from the stage room at the back of the build back into the lobby area. When it comes to making an entrance, it's all down to scale and decoration. Not every build needs a great entranceway, mind. Your standard home doesn't need to be an architectural marvel, but if you're making something that is a large and purposeful build, such as this academy, having an impressive entrance improves that first impression of the build by leaps and bounds. Finally, mixing materials. This is all pretty standard fare. There is something I'm guilty of not doing enough. All of the game's DLC packs work great together, and they're all visually impressive, though combining different materials to create different aesthetics is something that can be very useful, depending upon what you're creating. If you're a former Ark player like myself, this should be a fairly familiar concept to you. Many builders in Ark mix and match materials, and it works perfectly in that game, so doing the same in Conan can create some very nice changes in what would otherwise be a standard build. Let's build the same house 3 times over, and take a look at how different materials change how the build looks. Comparing the house made entirely from Khitan with this new stone and wooden house we're building now, you can already see the difference. Whilst the structure is pretty much identical, just by changing the materials used, the entire impression and aesthetic of the build changes completely. Now if we compare that stone and wood house to the black ice and Yamatai house we're building now, there is again a massively different feel with the aesthetics of this build. This is the first time I've actually combined black ice and Yamatai, and I kind of just did it on a whim for this video, but I kind of like it. It's different, but I think it works quite well. It wouldn't work for everything, but I think it could work for certain builds, so you may see some more of this in the future. By looking at these 3 variants, you can see how simply changing materials you're using, and using 2 or 3 different types of materials can massively change how the build looks and feels, and this can be utilised to suit the feeling of the build to its purpose. For example, stone and wood for residential builds, black ice and Yamatai for something a bit more cold yet regal, perhaps a alchemist or blacksmith, something like that. Khitan and wood gives a very, very homely feel, and there are plenty more variants out there. There are many different variants, and the only way to really find out what you like is to experiment with different materials. That's pretty much it. Just experiment and find something you like. And there we have it, 5 more building tips to help improve your Conan Exiles builds. Thanks for watching. You guys showed some great support for the first building tips video, so let's see if we can get that support again on this one. If you've enjoyed this video, drop a like, and if you have any future video suggestions, builds or otherwise, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I think I have enough tips for 1 more building tips video, so if you'd like to see that in the future, just let me know. Don't forget to join the fun on our Discord through the link in the description, and if you'd like to support the future of this channel, the link to my Patreon is also in the description, with various tiers and rewards available, including special Discord roles, sneak peeks at new videos before anyone else, your name at the end of each video, and more. On that note, a thanks to our patrons Sammy, Doomshade and Dawnfox. If you're new here, feel free to check out the channel. There is plenty more Conan Exiles content coming every Wednesday and Sunday, so make sure to subscribe and turn on post notifications to be notified when I go live on Twitch, to be the first to see the next video, and to join us on the road to 10,000 subscribers. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.